Coming up today, episode 213 of Husavik Heroes, we play the Super Cup for the last time and travel to Hungary to take on RB Leipzig. Before then, a domestic recap and also a transfer update. We had £160 million to spend. How did we do it? And also, we'll have the group stage draw for our last Champions League campaign. That's all coming up off the back of the intro. Welcome back to Husavik Heroes here on Shaun Does FM. I hope you are doing well and if you're looking forward to today's episode, just getting ready for this last European season of This Saved. And do remember to go down below, leave a thumbs up on the video, and if you haven't done so already and are enjoying the series here on the channel, also remember to hit that subscribe button and turn that notification bell on as well. It is greatly appreciated. But as you can see on screen, we have got up to the UEFA Super Cup, where we are going to take on RB Leipzig in today's episode. The reason that we are in the UEFA Super Cup is because at the end of last week, we did win our 4th Champions League title in the final against Manchester United. If you missed that episode, I'll leave a link to it over in the top right corner. Also, Phil Keir, of course, picked up the Conference League in that final over Benfica as well. So it was a very successful season for Icelandic football. And in today's episode, we can reveal the groups that each of the Icelandic teams are going to have in the UEFA competitions this season. But before then, we need to take on RB Leipzig. And before then, we need to update you guys on all of the stuff that I have done over the weekend. And a lot of that involves spending quite a huge transfer budget. Still £42 million left, albeit most of that money has been through player sales. So do keep that in mind. But we make our way over first to these schedules so I can show you all the stuff that's gone on since that Champions League final. As you can see off the back of a friendly game, which we did win 8-0 off the back of a bit of an international break after the Champions League final. We started to get back into the league season. As you can see, we have won every single game since that Champions League final, so nothing much to update you guys on here. Unbeaten in the league, and we have made our way through to a Icelandic Cup semi-final, taking on Fjolnir. It is quite a kind-looking semi-final draw for us, getting past Phil Keir in the quarter-final. That was probably the strongest other team left in the Icelandic Cup this season. As you can see, all the other teams come from the 1 deal, the 2 deal, and the 3 deals. So this should definitely be an Icelandic Cup that we can pick up. And of course, this is the last chance that we are going to get to pick up this Icelandic Cup in this save as well, where it does look like we are going to be heavy favourites no matter who we take on in the final, provided that we do get past Fjolnir in a very good position to pick up another Icelandic Cup. And in terms of the league, as you can see, we have already qualified for the Conference League. We are 12 points clear of Phil Keir and have caught them up on games played as well. So in quite a strong position with 8 games left. There's a chance that by the end of today's episode, we might actually be quite close to sealing that league title before we even get our Champions League campaign underway. So everything domestically is going quite well, but you might have seen some unfamiliar names there on the goal scoring part of that schedule. So we do need to update you guys a little bit on the transfer business that we have done off the back of ending the past Champions League season. A lot of it isn't actually that relevant because, truth be told, in the end, I didn't buy a lot of current first team players. I spent the leftovers of the money that I did have on some young promising players. So if you guys are going to pick up the save, you've got a few nice presents there from me. A lot of players who we spent around about the £12 million mark on, and also one quite big one there for £36 million, and Felipe Pedrosa for £30 million, and a couple of others for not much money. But a lot of those signings there that we did do in July, all players who are going to be lingering in our under-19s or out on loan at other clubs for this current season. The one signing that we did make to improve the first team was that of Cristiano Limoeiro. We did sell Lucas Parazek, so that is the reason that we have brought in Cristiano Limoeiro, when I realised last season that Parazek wasn't actually homegrown at club as a backup DM. I did think we could potentially improve in that area, and we did sign this guy in Cristiano Limoeiro out of RB Leipzig for £65 million. And as you can see, he looks like a very, very good midfield option and good backup there to Alain Basicki as the defensive midfielder for us here at Volsungur. 3-star current ability and 4.5-star goal potential. So he is a player that when Basicki does start to get on a little bit in the save in the future, can step into that first team and should be a very good backup option should an injury occur to Elaine Basicki. So that is really the only first team signing that we did make, and the rest of these guys are players who are going to be lingering in the under-19s. A few players that we had coming on free transfers in Doloxi and then Lamanza, players who I think I showed you guys towards the end of last week anyway, and then we started to really unload the purse strings in the last week of the transfer window when I realised we wouldn't have to replace any more first-team players. Marcus Jose is a fairly promising right-back that we have got in from Palmeiras in Brazil. Also from Palmeiras is Volta, a promising right-winger, albeit his potential not quite as high as I was hoping. We've signed Anwar Zaulahi from relegated Lyon in League A. He's another player with decent potential in that right-back spot. We've signed him for just under 10 million. Felipe Pedrosa, one of our more expensive signings, but he looks like quite a promising midfielder at only 16 years old. Above that, we've got Victor Abesso, we signed out of Basel, a Peruvian left-back, only 16 years old, also a player with quite a bit of potential. Florian Bonnefoy, we have signed out of France as well, another player with quite high potential. Common theme here to try and really bolster that under-19 team so that when we do sim forward a few years at the end of this European season, hopefully we'll have quite a bit of success still happening at Volsungur and also hopefully for the other Icelandic clubs. Jordan Mercier was another quite promising young player who we signed, 17 years old, quite promising midfielder. As you can see, and to cap things off, our most expensive of the young player signings that we did make was Jorge Lozano from Real Sociedad B. He is a right-back come centre-back with 2-star current ability and 5-star potential, but a lot of those players you are not going to see too much of this season. Might get a little bit more of an update on how those guys do look when we sim forward into the future off the back of this upcoming European campaign. So really, that one transfer that you do need to keep in mind was the replacement defensive midfielder, and that was off the back of selling Lucas Palazek to Napoli for 19.75 million, getting a decent upgrade in that position. Palazek did a decent job for the couple of seasons that he was there, but with that slightly limited potential, I didn't think it was time to let him go. And with that huge transfer budget that we did have, thought we did a pretty good job there in bringing Cristiano Limolo to the club. Palazek, we got on a free transfer back in 2035 and getting nearly £20 million off Napoli for him around about 4 years later. Quite a good bit of business, I think it is fair to say. Also, in terms of the outgoings, notable ones, there's quite a few players who weren't getting much game time here and were fringe players, but the other players that we did sell off the back of those two quite big departures in January, in Waswa and Kunzi. If we go up a bit further, Jonata is the other big one. He has gone to Montpellier in the end. He got a little bit sick of being a backup, emergency backup player here at Volsungur. A bit of a funny player, Jonata. We tried to give him some first-time football quite a while ago in the save, but every time we were going to give it to him, he got injured, and by that stage, there was sort of someone else who stepped up in his place. So Jonata, a little bit of a case of what could have been here in this save, but he has gone to Montpellier for £13 million, the Brazilian part Frenchman, and he spent quite a bit of time here at the club since we signed him off of Palmeiras back in 2030 for £5.5 million. Got, I would say, the best chunk of his career here at the club and still made a profit on that transfer. And the other bit of decent money that we did get in this past transfer window was for Robson. He was the foreign goalkeeper who was the backup to Calvolin a few seasons ago. I think we're going to just stick with our local Icelandic lad these days as the backup. So we cashed in on Robson, and he has gone to Tottenham for £25 million. But his potential did drop around about that 3.5-star mark when he was at the club. So he had a bit of a short stint here at Volsungur since we did sign him back in 2036 for £12.25 million. And we have made round about double on that transfer. So on the whole, getting a good bit of money there in the club off the back of spending our entire transfer budget in that past window, getting rid of £179 million. But in this past year, we have still got in £129 million. So in terms of net spend, it is a £50 million net spend, but a lot of additions, albeit just one of them relevant to the first team there in Cristiano Limolo. We will do the squad overview at the start of tomorrow's episode before we do get into that first Champions League game, just because I want to make sure that we do register the right players and aren't covering anyone who is not going to be getting any European football. Also, another transfer that I did just skim over there, one of our young backup box-to-box midfielders whose potential also did drop, Alvaro Arce. He has gone to Hamburg for £10 million. As you can see, his potential not too high, and we have the likes of Jakob Dobias, who has came back from loan and who can take his place, a player that we signed back in 2035 for £210,000 and making yet again a really good profit on him as we send him off to Germany after 4 years service at the club. So that pretty much wraps things up transfer-wise. Just the one notable change to our backup team, as I said, Limorero comes in place of the departing Lucas Palazek. But we are about to take part in the UEFA Super Cup. This is, of course, the game between the winner of the Champions League, us, and the winner of the Europa League last season, and that was RB Leipzig. We have taken on RB Leipzig in the Super Cup before. That was back in 2036-37. It was a real turn for a game. They did actually beat us that time. That was off the back of beating Arsenal in the final the year before. So it could be a bit of a history repeating case here, because last season we also beat Arsenal in the Super Cup. This is going to be the last chance that we do get to win the Super Cup as manager. So hopefully we can pick it up for the third time. 3 out of 4 in the save would not be a bad record at all. Going to the Data Hub, another bit of an update on our past meetings against RB Leipzig. We have done quite well against them in the Champions League. It's just that loss away from home in 2030 aside, but just that Super Cup was actually the last time we played them in 2036. We haven't played them for quite a while in this save. Hopefully we can get a bit of revenge on them for losing out the last time that we did play them. In this fixture, we're going to be putting out our best 11 for this game. We've got no serious injury concerns going into this one in RB Leipzig. They wouldn't have kicked off the domestic season yet in Germany, but they are a team who should really be up there in terms of the season preview. Jesse Marsch is still in charge there. It looks like they're playing a 5-2-3, so that is a formation which has proven a little bit troublesome for us in the past with this 4-3-3 that we do use here at Volsungur. But these days, the quality that we have on the park hopefully will be fine in this season. RB Leipzig are predicted to be finishing third in the Bundesliga. They did finish a little bit down the table last season, but through their win in the Europa League, did guarantee themselves some Champions League football for this upcoming season. Also interesting to note there are a few managerial changes, and especially Maurizio Pochettino getting sacked from PSG, of course, after they only finished third in League One last season behind the newly promoted Grenoble. Didn't actually spot that at the time, but Grenoble, fresh off the back of winning League One, went up and won League One at the first time of asking. So that was a very good effort from Grenoble, but Pochettino got sacked off the back of that season, but he has now joined a Hertha Berlin team, which is starting to become a real force in Germany and in Europe. That could be quite interesting, but hopefully this is a team today in RB Leipzig that we are capable of beating. As I said, we're going to be using our first choice 11 for this game, and we'll come back shortly from Hungary and hopefully pick up the Super Cup for a third and last time in the save. And here are the team sheets for this year's UEFA Super Cup. There we are. As I mentioned before, it is our first choice 11 and very little change from what we actually put out for the Champions League Final at the end of last week. There are RB Leipzig looking pretty similar to what we did see before on the club info page as well. And hopefully, as I said, we can pick up the UEFA Super Cup for a third time. And just shy of the 10-minute mark, we have our first highlight here of the Super Cup Final. Early doors RB Leipzig actually doing a slightly better job than we are so far in this game. So hopefully that turns off the back of this first highlight. But it does look like they're going to get on the front foot here. Decent shot there from Siani, and actually forces a decent save there from Calvullen to tip that over the bar. So the first chance does go to our German opposition. Thankfully, Bassaroge does deal with that subsequent corner, and RB Leipzig, for some reason, take that out and give us a throw. And that's the first chance of the game. Still 0-all, coming up to the 12-minute mark. And we have to go all the way forward to the 36-minute mark for the next highlight of this game. So far, RB Leipzig probably slightly edging things. They're certainly in front in the possession battle and also in terms of shots. So it hasn't been a great start for us so far in the Super Cup, but hopefully this will change here off the back of that throw-in that we did have. In fact, it was a free kick, wasn't it? It was RB Leipzig there, though, who were on the attack. Thankfully, I think that would have been Filippo Dinelli who got a foot in there to stop that Leipzig attack. And now nice ball over the top there for Adam Saki, but unfortunately that shot goes straight into the path of the Leipzig goalkeepers. Now a decent chance for both teams to open the scoring, and off the back of the subsequent corner, Dinelli puts that one over the bar, and not too long before halftime, It is still 0-0. And very shortly off the back of that previous highlight, we are back down the end here for a corner. This time, Basicki gets his head on that corner just over the bar, and still 0-0 with a few minutes left in the first half. And that is half-time in this year's UEFA Super Cup. Not many highlights in that first half. In the end, slightly in our favour, and so is the XG, but we didn't really start to improve until quite late in that first half, so really not too happy with that performance against the team we should be better than. Lasana Doumbia also picking up a yellow card late in that first half as well, so that might be something that we do actually deal with here at half-time. I think we'll give Bruno Costa some game time off of the pine. We'll tell the boys we're not too happy with that first half, and hopefully do a bit better here in the second 45 minutes, locked up at 0-0 in this UEFA Super Cup. And in fact, we have a highlight here immediately off the back of the restart, so hopefully that half-time team talk has inspired the boys a little bit as we get on the front foot. Nice and early, good 1-2 there between Lapase and Adam Saki, and what a team talk that was. We have opened the scoring here very, very early into the second half, and none other than the Moroccan striker in Adam Saki, who these days actually now also has Icelandic nationality, so it's quite useful for the domestic competitions. He is no longer a foreign player, but good 1-2 there between him and Lapase. Tucks that array pretty much in the bottom right corner, and we grab a 1-0 lead nice and early here in the second half. And not too long off the back of that, we are about to have a free kick here right on the halfway line, so this could be a very good start here to the second half. Lapase with a chance, tight angle, good save from the Leipzig goalkeeper, and off the back of that, Lapase does hit the sidening. Still 1-0, 5 minutes into the second half. And we go forward to the 57-minute mark. It's time for us to make our second substitution. This time, Jonathan Berger has picked up a yellow card, so Luis Herrera is going to come on for him, still 1-0 up. And we've just entered the last 20 minutes of this game, and it's time for us to make our last substitution. Things pretty quiet off the back of that opening flurry of highlights in the second half. Aga Tigre only on a 6.5 will give some game time to Malizio Menga off the bench, and hopefully hold on to this 1-0 advantage with just under 20 minutes left. And at the 78-minute mark, finally something else is happening here in the second half. We have a throw in here, and hopefully we can grab a cushion goal here to make sure we are going to pick up the Super Cup. We did lose position there through Bruno Costa, but that's a really good slide tackle there through Alain Basicki, and we do get position back here, albeit nearly lost it there down our right-hand side through Radenko Krolo, but thankfully we somehow kept hold of position, and Krolo will pass this one up to Malizio Menga. Just takes his time there on the ball, but so far looks like we are targeting them here down this right-hand side for this highlight. A few little flick-on headers there. We nearly get that ball forward to Adam Saki in a little bit of a dangerous area off the back of that ball forward from Lapase, but in the end that highlight comes to nothing, albeit we are still on the attack here off the back of that clearance from the goalkeeper. Malizio Menga puts a ball over here for Benvenu Bayer, who will roll that nicely into the bottom right corner, and Malizio Menga comes off the bench in the Super Cup yet again and has an impact. Of course, last season he came off the bench and scored a hat-trick, I believe, against Arsenal. This time he sets up a goal for Benvenu Bayer, and that should be the goal which seals us the Super Cup with only 12 minutes left and now a 2-0 lead. And we have just entered injury time here in this season's Super Cup. Up to the 90-minute mark, there's going to be 4 added minutes, but we are still on the attack. Saki there goes for Lapase. Thought there might be a little bit of a shallower ball on there, but nonetheless, we are still in position. Lapase with a shot. That one goes just over that top right corner over the crossbar, and we make our way now inside the last 2 minutes of added time. In the end, throughout the second half, we have certainly got right on top of RB Leipzig, and in the end, I think we deserved that win. Probably could have played a bit better in the early stages of the first half, but we have got the job done, and for the third and final time in this save, we have picked up the UEFA Super Cup and get a little bit of revenge there on RB Leipzig from a few seasons ago. We pick up a 2-0 win, and that means that we now have 4 trophies this season. So a good way to get ready there for this upcoming European season, a 2-0 win over RB Leipzig in that Super Cup final. Before we do get forward to the group stage draw for the Champions League, though, here's the first of what could be a few updates before we do get that far, and it is this season's youth intake. Obviously, none of these players are really going to get much game time for us, being in the last European season of this save. But as you can see, one decent prospect there in Alexander Ivan Poglimson. He is a centre-back, so he's probably a player who I am going to sign, and also a few other players there who are good talents, but that is what this season's youth intake does look like. Not an overly great one yet. Again, our youth intakes in this save haven't been that great, it is fair to say, so it's a little bit disappointing when you do consider how much money that we did invest into the youth facilities throughout this save, especially in the early stages. And off the back of attending the trial game, which our youth candidates did play against under-19s, we have signed 3 players: Alexander, Ivan, Paul Glimpson, as we mentioned before, certainly the most promising of the players through the season's youth intake, with that 3.5-star potential. Also 2 players with 3-star potential in Magnus Heiderson. He is a centre mid and he has 0.5-star current ability and 3-star potential, and also a potential left winger there in Jean Wilhelmsson, 1-star current ability and 3-star potential. Those will be the graduates from this last youth intake of the save. And we're now a few days shy of the Champions League Group Stage Draw. We've played a few more games in the domestic league, and as you can see, we've actually already qualified for next season's Champions League in the league before we've actually got the money for this upcoming Champions League season, which could actually be a little bit frustrating, as you can tell soon when you do see the budget that you guys are going to have for the next transfer window, which I'm not really going to take any part in because there's not much point, seeing as we can't register players for the knockouts of the Champions League in February, provided that we do make it that far, which we definitely should be, but we have already qualified for the Champions League and secured a top 2 finish in the league. And we do have our transfer budget. It's very, very disappointing. £23 million, which when you consider, when we checked in at the start of today's episode, we had £40 million. I'm not too sure where those £20 million did go. In terms of the wage budget as well, hasn't actually gone up by that much. So I think the board there have ripped us off a little bit. So maybe if you've got that save file from the end of last week, do something different with that 160 million, maybe save a little bit for this transfer window that is coming up the year after this one that I have just played. But the Volsungur board there, pinching a little bit of money here in 2039. Our transfer budget goes down from £40 million to £23 million. And one last update, one day before this group stage draw for the Champions League. Thought it was a bit of an interesting one, especially seeing as Atletico Madrid did nearly get relegated last year. In La Liga, they have signed one of the former heroes of the save, Benjamin Rubio, for £6 million. They should be absolutely fine this upcoming season. He is a little bit old now at 33 years old, but still has decent finishing, albeit haven't scouted him for a little while, but Atletico Madrid should be fine. Benjamin Rubio, all sweet. And not too long off the back of that Benjamin Rubio update, it is time for the group stage draw for this season's Champions League. Just one qualifying update that we do need to do prior to taking part in this group stage draw, because of course, Phil Carefree, finishing second in the league last season, did have a chance to qualify for the group stage of this season's Champions League off the back of winning the Conference League last season. They just held on in the third qualifying round. They took on Dynamo Moscow out of Russia. They lost the second leg at home 2-1, but thankfully did pick up a 2-0 win in the first leg. So Phil Care did get past that third qualifying round, albeit they had quite a tough opponent for Champions League qualifying. In the playoff, you can probably see them there standing out like a pretty sore thumb. They had to take on PSG. They actually got a draw in the second leg, which is not a bad result, but unfortunately they lost the first leg 3-1. So Phil Care missed out to PSG in Champions League qualifying. Absolutely no shame in that, but that does mean that they are going to be in the group stages of the Europa League this season alongside Nuts KR, who make their way into that competition through finishing third in the domestic league last season. And we're going to do a Conference League update off the back of this Champions League draw, because that has not quite finished yet, and we do still have one Icelandic team who are alive and could make their way into the group stages of the Conference League this season, but guaranteed to have 3 teams in Europe this season. Hopefully we get one more in the Conference League, but it is time now for the group stage draw for the Champions League this season. We're going to just start off and run through the first pot, because it doesn't matter, because of course with us being the previous Champions League winners and the top seeded team in Europe, there were no changes for both us as the top seed on the coefficient table as a club, and also for the Icelandic League that is still ranked 7 off the back of that past European season. But we are in pot 1, so we'll just get through this quickly and then we can focus on pots 2, 3 and 4. And as you can see, we have ended up in Group C. Quite amusing to see Grenoble there as a top seed in the Champions League off the back of that win, as mentioned earlier, in Ligue 1 last season. Now, pot 2, Man United, Real Madrid Man City, AC Milan, PSG, Bayern Munich, Inter Milan, and Nice. I would quite like to take on PSG because at the moment, I think they are a little bit of a hurting fallen giant off the back of only finishing third in League A last season. But Nice will go alongside Juventus in Group A. Group B, AC Milan alongside Hertha Berlin. Still some quite big clubs there for us, notably both of the Manchester clubs and Real Madrid. If we could avoid those three, that would be very, very nice indeed. But we get the team who we defeated in the Champions League final at the end of last week in Manchester United. That is going to be a big clash to see who could finish top of this group. So we might have our work cut out for us this season, trying to finish on top of our Champions League group. PSG go into Group D alongside Chelsea. Group E is Grenoble and Inter. Group F, Man City alongside Sporting from Portugal. They can be quite happy with that draw. Real Madrid join RB Leipzig, and that means that Barcelona will get Bayern Munich. Pot 3, we have Real Sociedad, Napoli, Dortmund, Liverpool, Cologne, Partizan, Ajax, and Xavier. They should all be teams at this stage of the save that we are capable of beating. Cologne go into Group A. We have Real Sociedad in Group B, and we are going to get Xavier out of Portugal. That might be a good chance for us to just try and close that gap on the coefficient table with 2 wins over those guys. So don't mind that draw at all off the back of quite a tough pot 2 opponent in last year's finalists. In Man United, Partizan go into Group D, Liverpool Group E, Dortmund Group F. We have Napoli in Group G, and in Group H it is Ajax and pot 4, lots of average teams who we should definitely be beating. Banik Esklava go into Group A, SV Horn into Group B, and we get Galatasaray out of Turkey. We haven't taken on too many Turkish opposition in the safe, so that could be something quite interesting, but certainly a team that we should be beating both times that we do take them on. So I think it's pretty short odds for us and Man United to be getting out of this group. It just depends which order those 2 teams do end up in. Group D is finished off by Famalicão, Group E, Panathinaikos, Group F, Real Sporting, Group G, Midtjylland, and that means that Lokomotiv Moscow will complete Group H. So there is your draw for the group stage of the Champions League this season. We will be taking on Man United, Xavier, and Galatasaray. And a few clicks off the back of that group stage draw for the Champions League. The draws have taken place for both the Europa League and the Conference League off the back of the last round of qualifying for those competitions. We'll do an update on Conference League qualifying in a second, but we did already know we had 2 other Icelandic teams in the group stage draw for the Europa League. First off, we have Nuts KR. They have been drawn in Group B, and it does look like a bit of a tough group for those guys alongside Valencia, Rangers, and Red Bull Salzburg. So Nuts KR there will have their work cut out if they want to make the knockouts of the Conference League, at the very least through finishing third in that group. And if we make our way down a bit further, in fact, I'm probably going to have to go to a different screen for this one, so my face cam is not in the way. But Phil here, of course, defending champions from the Conference League, are in Group G, and they are alongside Leicester, Lazio, and Basel. That is quite a strong group, but at the very least, hopefully, Phil here could finish third in that group and maybe get a chance to defend their title down in the Conference League. That might be something which suits them quite nicely, as well as us as Iceland on the coefficient table. But those are the 2 teams in the Europa League this season from Iceland, and both of them, though, do look like they are in quite strong groups. And down to the Conference League, we had 2 teams who took part in qualifying for this competition. Unfortunately, in the second qualifying round, Akranes, they got bumped out early by Storms Godset out of Norway. Hopefully got that name right. But of course, these days, they don't have Ori Porhalson. He is our player these days, so that is not that surprising. They got bumped out there 5-1 by the Norwegian team in the second qualifying round. But skipping forward to the final qualifying round, the fourth one, and HK took their place in this round and thankfully overcame a 2-1 deficit after the first leg against Malmo from Sweden, picked up a 3-1 win in the second leg at home, and that does mean they are going to be taking their part in the group stage of the Conference League this season. So thankfully HK do turn that around, because at the halfway stage that did look a little bit dicey there for the lone Icelandic team that was left in qualifying and going over to the groups. And you can see once we make our way down a little bit, and yet again I'm going to have to bring this up, as they are also in Group G. HK have been drawn alongside Omanoia from Cyprus, Villarreal from Spain, and Ilves out of Finland. I'd like to think HK should have a decent chance of finishing second in that group. Villarreal are probably the favourites to finish on top of that group, but hopefully HK can make their way into the knockouts, and from there you never really know, as we saw last season after Phil here only finished second in their group behind Bayer Leverkusen, but then went on to win the whole thing. Hopefully HK can pick that one up and keep it in Iceland, either them or one of those two teams who might drop down from the Europa League. But I think that's going to do it for today's episode. We picked up the Super Cup over RB Leipzig and also got an interesting group there for the Champions League this season, drawn alongside Manchester United, the team who we did beat in last season's final, as well as Xavi's or Galatasaray. As I said, we should be getting out of that group. It will just be interesting to see whether we finish it in first or second position going into that first knockout round draw. And coming up tomorrow, first game of the group stage is a big one. It is at home against Manchester United. It is a rematch from last season's final, so we'll definitely have that game. Also do a squad overview before that one, the last one that we will do for this series. And hopefully, as long as I get time, we'll also do the Icelandic Cup final, which we should be making as long as we get past Fjolnir in the semi-final. But Monday is a stream night, so no guarantees. But at the very least, we'll definitely have that first game of the group stage of the Champions League against Manchester United, a rematch from last season's final. But if you did enjoy today's episode, then do remember to go down below, leave a thumbs up on the video, and if you haven't done so already and are enjoying this series here on the channel, also remember to hit that subscribe button and turn that notification bell on as well. And until tomorrow, where we kick off the group stages of our last Champions League season with a final rematch. Thank you very much for watching. Keep on keeping on, and I'll see you then. Cheers.